Welcome to Kevin Makes Cool Things. I'm Kevin, and today I'm trying something new with this warp totem from Stardew Valley. Most of my projects have focused on anime and manga, but I also play video games. Not too much since I spend most of my free time working on stuff like this, but it is something I really enjoy when I can find the time. I bought Stardew Valley for myself in late 2020. That was a rough year for me, and pretty much everyone else, and I wanted something relaxing to play. I quickly fell in love with the game, and I've been wanting to make something from it, to remind me that I can always boot it up if I need to unwind. I first started doodling designs for this in early 2021, but I was only using OpenSCAD at that point. I didn't think I could manage this, especially the lower plant portion. I did attempt to make a star drop. Other people have made these, but I was going to try following the pixel art style exactly because I thought it would look cool. My printer didn't do the cleanest job, and I didn't manage to salvage it during the finishing process. With the experience I've gained over the last year, and the upgrades I've made to my printer, I could probably pull this off now. I've just been working on other things. If those of you watching really want to see this, then if this video gets 100 likes, I'll go back and remake the star drop. I started the design process in GIMP by making a few big choices. My first choice was about the general shape. I could either mimic the pixel art and try to do something cute, or I could go with a cylinder, which would probably produce better, more recognizable results. After thinking this over, I decided to go with a cylinder. I had a similar choice for the wings. I could keep them more blocky and stay true to the original pixel art, or I could round them over. I decided to keep them blocky because I didn't want to lose the charm of the original artwork. My last decision had to do with the plant material on the bottom. I considered doing this in a blocky pixel art style, and I did a lot of sketching to figure out what that might look like, but I ultimately decided to go with a smoother look, because I thought it would turn out better. After making these choices, I roughly sketched the measurements I would be using. I had to divide this up more than you'd probably expect, because I want everything to round nicely. I'll be using a subdivision surface modifier, which is the secret sauce I use to make most of my models in Blender, so these cuts will help limit the rounding to only certain areas. I worked on this in Blender and used my sketch as a starting point. I did end up moving things around a fair bit to make this look just right, but that was pretty easy given the way that I divided this up. The plant material around the base was less planned. I tried a few different things until I got it to look the way I wanted. I have never done anything like foliage before, so this was a lot of trial and error, with the emphasis being on the air. I divided this into two pieces for printing, because I knew it would make the painting step much easier. I followed my usual process, where I do an initial round of sanding with my Dremel tool, apply wood filler, and then go through and sand everything with sandpaper and little files. Afterwards, I applied a round of spray-on sandable primer. Once that had dried, I went back and applied some more wood filler, did additional sanding, and then primed it all again. I talked about this when I was working on my full Clearing Another World under a Goddess with Zero Believers dagger a couple of months ago, but I'm trying to do a better job with the finishing process. At this point, all the pieces were looking pretty great. This is partly because I've been doing a better job with sanding and such, but also because I've been upgrading and calibrating my 3D printer to prepare for some bigger projects, so the quality of the prints has gone up. I did run into issues with some stubborn bits of support which were stuck in the eyes and mouth. Eventually I got most of this out with a chisel, but there was some roughness in there I couldn't quite address. I don't think it's a big issue since these areas won't be too visible once everything is painted and assembled. I had big plans for painting this. I was going to use my airbrush, which I haven't gotten to use much lately and I need to practice with. Airbrushing on the wood and plant textures seemed like a great opportunity, but I decided not to at the last minute for three pretty mediocre reasons. First, I dropped my airbrush while setting up, and lost a piece of the nozzle. I do have other nozzles in different sizes, but I've never used them before, and I didn't want to practice with those on something I'd spent so much time on. Second, I realized I didn't have most of the required colors. When I bought my airbrush, I bought a basic airbrush paint kit, which I assumed had a good variety of colors. What I recently realized is it's meant for painting figurines, so it has a large variety of skin colors, but no good browns or greens. The final reason is this came out looking too nice. I have never done this good a job finishing a 3D print before in my life, and even if everything had gone right while setting up for the airbrushing, I'm not sure I would have wanted to risk it. I decided to paint this by hand, which I have a lot more experience with, and tried to do a really good job. That was a challenge all on its own. I started by applying a base coat to both pieces, which I'm pretty comfortable with. The detailing is where it gets trickier. Going back to the first project I ever posted, which was a 3D printed wand I made for a Halloween costume, I've been making jokes about how I don't know how to paint wood grain. My standard approach is to paint everything a basic brown, and then add some darker paint and wipe it off with either my fingers or a paper towel. This smudging effect does a nice job of adding texture and looks pretty convincing, as long as you don't get too close. For this project, I decided to step up my game and look up some tutorials. Surprisingly, it turns out my approach wasn't that far off. You're going to see me mixing paint and 2-part epoxy on paint swatches. There's no particular reason for this. I just grab a bunch of them when I'm deciding what color to paint a room, and then I don't need most of them afterwards. Turns out they work pretty well for this kind of thing. I learned a few things from the painting tutorials which I put into practice on this project. Mainly, that in addition to the dark color I'd already been adding, I should be adding a lighter orangish color as well. I made sure to always apply these vertically, whether I was using a brush or wiping it off with a paper towel, to make sure this had a consistent grain. It turned out pretty well in the end. It's a little bit darker than the reference image, but that's mostly because of the shade of brown I happen to have around. For the plant material, I tried applying light and dark paint over a base green coat, like I'd seen in some online tutorials. It didn't really work, so I ended up painting over this and trying it again later with just the darker green. It turned out okay, but I could probably do better in future. I haven't tried to detail plants like this before, so it was all new to me. Once these pieces were dry, I used 2-part epoxy to stick everything together. After letting it dry overnight, I applied some clear spray-on matte sealer to finish off the project. I am really happy with these results. The finishing turned out way better than I hoped, and it's a cheerful reminder of a game that I love. I'll post the files on Thingiverse in case you want to make your own. There will be a link in the video description. I wanted to make the farm warp totem because that's where I'd want to jump into the world, but you should be able to make any of the other versions by just painting the plant material a different color. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like. It does a lot to help out this channel. If you like my projects and want to see more, then please subscribe. This is my 20th consecutive month posting a video, and there's a lot more coming.